6,000 yuan, a year-end party for 150 people. If you don't pull it off, get out.
The boss's eyes were filled with disdain. I clenched my fists, turned around, and dialed my second uncle back in my hometown. He was the best hand for 100 miles around when it came to organizing weddings and funerals. On the day of the party, the boss looked at the erected big red archway and the traditional open-air banquet, completely dumbfounded. The air conditioning in Mr. Wang's office was blasting. The cold air drilled down my collar, yet cold sweat was oozing out my back, layer after layer.
Li Ming, how long have you been with the company?
Wang Difu, our general manager, was in his early 50s. His hair was combed meticulously, and the eyes behind his gold-rimmed glasses always revealed a sharp, scrutinizing glint. He didn't look at me. His fingers tapped lightly on the expensive mahogany desk, as if playing a prelude to my departure. Mr. Wang, 2 years and 3 months. I answered dutifully, but an ominous feeling rose in my heart. He finally looked up at me, the corners of his mouth curling into an arc that was hard to distinguish between a smile and a sneer.
2 years. Not long, not short.
He pulled a document from his drawer and tossed it casually in front of me.
You're in charge of the company's year-end party this year.
I was startled. Before I could even process this sudden, heavy responsibility, Mr. Wang's next words plunged me into an icy abyss.
Budget, 6,000.
6,000? I doubted my own ears. Mr. Wang, did you mean 60,000?
Is something wrong with your ears or your brain?
He leaned back into his large executive chair, making no attempt to hide the contempt in his eyes.
I said 6,000 RMB. It needs to cover the entire company, top to bottom, a year-end party for 150 people. Venue, catering, entertainment, materials, everything included.
My mind went blank instantly. 6,000 yuan for a party of 150 people. That wouldn't even be enough to book a large private room at a KTV for an all-nighter. Forget the venue. Just ordering box lunches for 150 people would cost more than that. This wasn't a task. It was humiliation. My cheeks burned, and a sense of humiliation surged like a tide, drowning my reason. Mr. Wang, this budget, it's absolutely impossible. My voice trembled slightly, not from fear but from anger.
Impossible?
Mr. Wang laughed as if he'd heard the world's funniest joke.
Li Ming, the company hired you to solve problems, not to raise them. If you can't do it, get out.
He said the words "get out" softly but viciously, like 2 nails driven deep into my dignity. He was just watching me perform like a monkey. He was certain I couldn't pull it off. He just wanted an excuse to fire me. I clenched my fists tight, my fingernails digging into my palms, using the pain to barely maintain a facade of calm. Why was I being treated like this? Just because I had no background, no connections? Just because I was an ordinary guy from the countryside who studied hard to get out and wanted to put down roots in the big city?
What? You don't like it?
Mr. Wang leisurely picked up his teacup.
Young man, putting a little pressure on you is for your own good. I'm cultivating you.
Looking at his sanctimonious face, my stomach churned violently. I took a deep breath, picked up the thin party requirements from the desk, and without saying a word, turned and walked out of the office. The moment the door closed, I heard his contemptuous snort. Back at my desk, a strange atmosphere pervaded the entire office area. No one spoke, but countless gazes fixed on me like searchlights, some with sympathy, some with pity, but most with schadenfreude.
Li Ming, you're dead meat this time.
My colleague, Lil Zhang, passed behind me. His voice was hushed, but I clearly heard the excitement of someone waiting for a show. I ignored him and slumped into my chair, my mind a tangled mess. I turned on my phone and started searching frantically. Venue rentals, group catering, event planning. Every price quote that popped up seemed to be ruthlessly mocking that pitiful 6,000 yuan budget. The light from the screen reflected on my face, yet all I saw was gloom. A message from my mother popped up on the screen.
Xiao Ming, I received the money. Don't work too hard out there on your own. Take care of your health.
Below, it was an electronic receipt for her hospitalization fees. There was also a mortgage payment reminder from the bank. What would losing this job mean? It meant my mother's medicine might be cut off, It meant I'd be sleeping on the streets next month. Despair was like an airtight net, trapping me tight. I buried my head in my arms, feeling like a trapped beast forced to the edge of a cliff. One step back meant an endless abyss. Just then, my phone rang abruptly. The caller ID read Second Uncle. A loud boom exploded in my mind, like a bolt of lightning cleaving through the heavy darkness. Second Uncle. How could I have forgotten him? My all-powerful second uncle, the one who handled weddings and funerals for 100 miles around our hometown. A trace of crazy, desperate hope suddenly ignited in my heart. I pressed the call button with a trembling hand.
Hello? Xiao Ming? What's up?
From the other end of the line came the loud, familiar voice of my second uncle, Li Jianguo. Second Uncle. I opened my mouth, but 1,000 thoughts clogged my throat, and for a moment, I didn't know where to begin.
You don't sound right. What happened? Tell Second Uncle. Even if the sky falls, I'll hold it up for you.
His words were like a warm current that instantly burst through the dam in my heart. I poured it all out in one go. Manager Wang's unreasonable demands, the 6,000 yuan budget, and the annual meeting for 150 people. There was silence on the other end for a few seconds. My heart tightened. Was even Second Uncle helpless?
Is that all?
Second Uncle's voice rang out again, carrying a calmness that made light of heavy burdens.
Feeding 150 mouths with 6,000 yuan. It's tight, sure, but not impossible.
I was stunned. Second Uncle, it's not just about eating. We need a venue, performances.
I know. City folks call it an annual meeting. Back in our village, we call it holding a banquet for guests. It's the same principle.
Second Uncle chuckled on the other end.
It's not hard. Just you wait.
With that, he hung up. I clutched my phone, my heart pounding with uncertainty. Was Second Uncle really coming? Could he pull it off? This was a modern corporate annual meeting, not a village banquet. Early the next morning, while I was still tossing and turning over the matter, the company receptionist called.
Li Ming, there's a gentleman downstairs looking for you. He says he's your second uncle.
I rushed downstairs and immediately spotted Second Uncle standing in the center of the lobby. He was wearing a worn dark blue jacket, a pair of khaki trousers washed to a pale fade, and black cloth shoes with specks of mud on them. In his hand, he carried a bulging old canvas bag, clutching the strap tightly. A thick, rustic aura, utterly out of place in this gleaming office building, washed over me. Second Uncle. I walked over quickly.
Xiao Ming.
Seeing me, Second Uncle smiled honestly.
Your company is quite impressive.
As I led Second Uncle inside, he looked around curiously, seeing the smooth marble walls. He even reached out and touched them gingerly, as if confirming they were real. As we walked through the open-plan office area, all my colleagues' gazes stuck to us like magnets. In those eyes, there was doubt and confusion, but mostly there was naked mockery. I could sense their subtext. Look, Li Ming is at his wit's end. He actually brought in a savior from the countryside. My face burned intensely. I wished I could find a hole in the ground to crawl into. Just then, we ran right into Manager Wang. He was coming out of the conference room, accompanying several middle-aged men who looked like clients. Seeing me and Second Uncle, he paused for a moment. Then, the look of contempt behind his gold-rimmed glasses deepened. He stopped, looking Second Uncle up and down as if viewing an alien creature.
Li Ming.
He spoke in a snide tone, his voice neither loud nor soft, but just enough for everyone around to hear.
Who is this?
Manager Wang, this is my Second Uncle. I braced myself and introduced him.
Oh.
Manager Wang dragged out the syllable, the sarcasm practically spilling over.
So this is the expert you invited to organize the annual meeting? What, are you planning to turn the annual meeting into a village banquet or a funeral?
A few stifled snickers arose from the surroundings. My fists clenched instantly, and the blood rushed to my head. He could humiliate me, but he could not humiliate my family. Just as I was about to explode, Second Uncle spoke up first. He had been looking at Manager Wang calmly. Now, instead of anger, a hint of a smile appeared on his face.
A village banquet, a joyous occasion.
Second uncle's tone was neither humble nor arrogant. His voice wasn't loud, but it was exceptionally clear.
If you don't believe it, Manager Wong, come backstage yourself when the time comes. See if our joyous occasion is done properly.
The smile on Manager Wong's face froze. He probably didn't expect that this rustic-looking country bumpkin would dare to answer him so directly. Second uncle's gaze was faint, yet it seemed to pierce through to the soul, carrying the insight of someone who had seen the world. Manager Wong was shaken by second uncle's presence and actually couldn't find words for a moment. He let out a cold snort and, with a nasty look on his face, led his clients around us and walked away. I stared blankly at the side of second uncle's face. My heart, which had been pounding with anxiety just moments ago, suddenly settled down. I think I was starting to understand why. Second uncle said this wouldn't be hard. Second uncle didn't take that little interlude to heart. Instead, he asked me to take him for a walk around the company vicinity. We didn't go to any high-end hotels or business clubs. Second uncle couldn't even be bothered to look at those places. He specifically picked the nooks and crannies to walk through. Abandoned factories in the suburbs, farm courtyards awaiting demolition, and even empty lots overgrown with wild grass. I followed behind him, completely baffled. Second uncle, what were we looking for?
Looking for a stove.
Second uncle didn't look back as he spoke.
To get big things done, you first have to secure the stove. Once the stove is secure, people's hearts are secure.
I listened in a fog, but I honestly followed him and told him everything I knew about the company in detail. The corporate culture, the age demographics of the staff, what everyone liked to chat about, the style of previous annual parties. Second uncle listened as he walked, nodding occasionally, falling into deep thought. The sun was setting, gilding the cold city with a layer of warm light. Looking at second uncle's slightly hunched back, a strange sense of anticipation suddenly rose within me. Maybe, for this seemingly impossible annual party, a miracle really would happen. That night, in my small rental apartment, second uncle took out his combat gear. No laptop, no PPT, just a few large sheets of white paper, a red pencil, and a blue pencil. He spread the paper on the table, unfolded the legs of his reading glasses, and started sketching. I leaned over to look and almost popped my eyes out. That wasn't an annual party plan. It was clearly a layout for a village temple fair. Venue: abandoned brick factory in the suburbs. Pros: large space, cheap rent, no worries about disturbing residents. Stage: open-air setup, red cloth background, surrounded by streamers and balloons. Catering: Laya Shuixi, traditional flowing banquet. Main courses: stews in big cauldrons, iron pot goose, freshly slaughtered pigs, and sheep. Staples: unlimited handmade steam buns and corn cakes. Program: voluntary staff performances plus folk artist support, Swana Band, local opera. Manpower: villager mutual aid group for weddings and funerals from back home. I looked at the lines of handwritten text, filled with rustic flavor, and my scalp tingled. Big red arches. A village banquet. A Swana Band. If I took this to the company, let alone Boss Wong, any random colleague would laugh me to death. This wasn't a company annual party. This was simply a live-action version of country love. Second uncle, this won't work. It's too hillbilly. I rubbed my hands together in anxiety. Our company is full of young people. We care about style, about taste. If we do this, I'm definitely losing my job. Second uncle put down his pen and looked up at me, his eyes calm.
Xiao Ming, when hosting a celebration, what is the most important thing?
Is it being presentable? I tentatively answered. Second uncle shook his head.
It's the atmosphere, the liveliness, the human touch.
He patted my shoulder.
Your boss gave you 6,000 yuan. He clearly doesn't want you to make it look presentable. He wants to see you become a joke, want to see you hit a dead end. If we still try to imitate those high-end parties, that is truly the road to ruin.
He pointed at the big pot stew on the diagram, his eyes gleaming.
This is called taking the unorthodox path, winning through simplicity. City people are used to delicate hotel dishes. If you let them eat a steaming, authentic meal from a big iron pot, they might not say it, but they'll remember it better than anything. Trust second uncle. I guarantee those people in your company will have an annual party they'll never forget.
I looked at second uncle's certain gaze, a war raging in my mind. On one side were the disdainful looks of the elites and Boss Wong's mean face. On the other was second uncle's rustic plan, ridiculous sounding, yet seemingly containing some strange logic. Giving up meant getting fired right now. Betting on this might lead to a worse death, but it might also be the only way out. I gritted my teeth and decided to go all in. Second uncle, I'll listen to you. The next day, I pulled an all-nighter. Using my amateur skills, I packaged second uncle's handwritten plan into a PPT. I tried my best to use high-sounding vocabulary, calling the abandoned brick factory a post-industrial retro venue, the village banquet an immersive rustic dining experience, and the Swana Band a faux performance of intangible cultural heritage. When I stood in the conference room, facing Boss Wong and a group of executives playing that PPT, my palms were entirely covered in sweat. The conference room was terribly quiet, save for the sound of my stammering explanation. When I reached the part about the venue layout and a rendering of a big red archway, which I cobbled together using photo editing software, appeared on the PowerPoint, the audience finally reacted. A ripple of stifled snickering broke out. Mr. Wong's expression went beyond livid. His face was practically the color of soot.
Li Ming.
Finally losing his patience, he slammed the table and stood up. Pointing at the red archway on the screen, his voice trembling, he shouted,
Are you trying to turn our company's annual party into a village market fair? Or are you throwing yourself an early farewell party?
The room erupted in laughter. The executives and department managers were doubled over with laughter, their eyes filled with disdain and mockery as they looked at me. My face felt like it had been slapped hard, burning with stinging pain. I fought to withstand the pressure and straighten my back. Mr. Wong, that is exactly where the innovation of this proposal lies. I met his gaze and spoke every word clearly. With such an extremely limited budget, we have no choice but to break with convention. I believe that this kind of down-to-earth, distinctive annual party experience will actually leave a deep impression and let everyone feel a different kind of care from the company.
Care?
Mr. Wong sneered.
All I see is a humiliating spectacle.
He sat back down, scanning the room of snickering people, seemingly enjoying the thrill of my public execution. The conference room fell into a deathly silence. Everyone was waiting for Mr. Wong to pronounce my sentence. After a full half-minute, Mr. Wong spoke again, his eyes filled with amusement and cruelty.
Good. Very good.
He nodded.
I approve it. I want to see just how you, Li Ming, are going to die this time.
This approval felt more like a death warrant, but inside, I breathed a sigh of relief. At least I had secured the opportunity to execute the plan. The moment I walked out of the conference room, I felt that my back was completely soaked with sweat. But I knew that this war had only just begun. The proposal was approved, but Mr. Wong's approval was more like setting me up for a fall. I became the laughingstock of the entire company, and every step of the execution felt like walking on the blade of a knife. The first challenge was the venue. Following second uncle's instructions, I specifically looked for abandoned factory buildings in the suburbs. But as soon as the landlord heard I was organizing a company annual party with a budget of only $6,000, they shook their heads like rattle drums.
Young man, are you joking? $6,000 isn't even enough to rent it as a warehouse. Company annual party? You aren't running some pyramid scheme, are you?
After hitting a wall 7 or 8 times in a row, I was disheartened and felt like a scammer. Just when I was on the brink of despair, second uncle called.
Xiao Ming, don't worry about the venue anymore. I asked around and found a place.
Second uncle's voice was as steady as ever. It turned out he had brought his network of connections from our hometown with him when he came. He had contacted a distant relative who had left home years ago to make a living. The man happened to have an old brickyard in the suburbs that had been sitting idle for a long time. The moment he heard it was my second uncle asking, he didn't hesitate to rent it to us for a price that was practically a giveaway. With the venue settled, the bigger challenge was renovation and decoration. I asked several online renovation teams for quotes, but as soon as they heard my requirements and budget, they blocked me immediately. Brother, We run a renovation business, not a charity. I was frantic with worry, but second uncle remained unhurried and made another call back to our hometown.
Hello, Juicy. Those brothers on your sister-in-law's side, they haven't lost their touch, have they? Right? There's work. In the city, a big job.
The next day, a battered blue light truck chugged its way to the entrance of the brickyard. 5 or 6 dark-skinned men with honest, simple smiles jumped out. These were the fellow villager mutual aid group second uncle had spoken of, his go-to team for organizing weddings and funerals for years. There were carpenters, electricians, and painters. Every one of them was a skilled craftsman with unique talents. They didn't wear uniforms and brought their own tools, hammers, saws, ink markers. The gear looked rustic, but the moment they started working, their efficiency and professionalism were immediately apparent. Although their style had a rough, informal quality to it, their efficiency was astonishing. In just one day, the weeds were cleared, the damaged walls were patched, and the frame for the stage was set up. The external difficulties had been resolved by second uncle, but the resistance inside the company made it nearly impossible for me to move forward. Preparing for the annual party required cooperation from various departments, especially the administration department. But the manager there was a snob. She had long since realized that Mr. Wong was out to get me, so she completely ignored my applications and requests.
Li Ming, I don't have the warehouse key here, go ask someone else. Procurement for party materials? Sorry, the paperwork hasn't gone through yet. You'll have to wait.
I went to Manager Wong time and again, hoping he would step in and coordinate things. Every time, Manager Wong adopted an attitude of aloof indifference.
This is your assignment. If there are problems, solve them yourself. Don't come running to me for every little thing. I don't have the time.
He made it clear he was going to stand idly by and watch me fail. I was shaking with rage, yet there was nothing I could do. That night, I sat alone in the empty workshop, staring at the half-finished stage, feeling a chill run through my heart. Second uncle walked over, carrying 2 bottles of beer and a bag of peanuts. He saw right through my predicament.
Xiao Ming, don't fret. It's easier to deal with the king of hell than his petty demons. To handle people like this, you have to use the methods meant for petty demons.
The next day, second uncle managed to procure a live sheep from somewhere. Right there in the clearing outside the workshop, he set up a large cauldron and stewed a pot of fragrant mutton soup. He told me to invite the folks from the administration department over. Those admin staff, usually so stuck up, were initially reluctant. But the moment they caught a whiff of that overpowering aroma, they couldn't move a muscle to leave. Second uncle and the villagers from the mutual aid group greeted them warmly, ladling out brimming bowls of mutton for them, paired with steaming hot white buns. They had never eaten such authentic, hearty farmhouse food before. Sweat poured down their faces as they ate and sang its praises. After a few rounds of drinks, the atmosphere warmed up. Second uncle didn't mention a single thing about work. He just made small talk and shared funny stories for back home. The simplicity and sincerity of the villagers gradually touched these corporate types who were used to living behind masks in the city. By the end of the meal, the administration manager's attitude had done a complete 180.
Li Ming, look at this. If you needed something, you should have said so sooner. Tomorrow I'll bring the warehouse key over to you myself. And I'll personally chase up the materials for you.
And just like that, the crisis was diffused by a pot of mutton soup. Just as I was marveling at second uncle's wisdom, a greater crisis quietly approached. Little Lee, Manager Wong's secretary and a recent college graduate, pulled me into the stairwell during the lunch break.
Li Ming.
She looked at me with concern.
I overheard Manager Wang on the phone. He said this annual party is just a pretext. No matter how well you organize it, he's going to kick you out. Because one of his relatives has their eye on your position.
Little Lee's words were like a bucket of ice water poured over my head, chilling me to the bone. So that was it. So all my hard work was destined to be futile from the very start. He never intended to give me a chance at all. An immense anger and sense of injustice burned like wildfire in my chest. Why? Why were my efforts and dignity worthless in his eyes? I leaned against the cold wall and slowly slid down to the floor. No, I couldn't just give up like this. This wasn't just about keeping my job anymore. This was for my own dignity. Wang Difu, you want me gone? Well, I'm not going anywhere. I wasn't just going to pull off this annual party. I was going to make it something you would never forget for the rest of your life. I stood up from the floor. The last traces of hesitation and cowardice in my eyes had been burned to ashes. Taking second uncle with me, I scoured the vegetable markets of several surrounding villages and towns, going door to door to farmers to ask for prices. We secured the freshest vegetables and the plumpest chickens and ducks at the lowest possible prices. Watching the trucks haul back load after load of ingredients, the fire in my heart burned ever hotter. Under the skillful hands of second uncle and the mutual aid group, the party venue changed day by day. At the workshop entrance, a gigantic red inflatable arch rose from the ground, emblazoned with gold lettering, warmly celebrating the complete success of XX Company's 20XX annual gala. Flanking the arch, 2 rows of brightly colored flags fluttered in the wind, stretching from the entrance all the way inside the workshop. Inside the workshop, a simple open-air stage had been set up. The backdrop was a large piece of red cloth. Though crude, it looked exceptionally festive. Everything was permeated with an intense, unadulterated, rustic flavor. Every day I looked at this masterpiece, my heart pounded like a drum. That afternoon, the unexpected happened. Manager Wang actually brought several important clients to inspect a new plot of land near our factory complex. Their motorcade happened to pass right by our annual party venue. I was in the middle of directing the villagers to hang lanterns when I saw Manager Wang's car stop in the distance. He rolled down his window and stared in disbelief at the blazing red temple fair scene before him. His complexion changed at a speed visible to the naked eye, going from astonishment to an iron-green pallor before finally turning pitch black. The clients also stuck their heads out, wearing smiles of curiosity and amusement.
Manager Wang, is your company celebrating some sort of happy occasion?
One client teased. President Wang's cheek twitched. He said nothing. He simply took out his phone, aimed it at the big red archway and the colorful flags, and with a click, snapped a photo. Then, he abruptly rolled up his window, and the convoy sped away, leaving a trail of dust behind. A few minutes later, my phone pinged. The internal company work group had exploded. President Wang had posted the photo he took to the group. He didn't name anyone, but he added a single, loaded caption.
Can anyone tell me what kind of grand event our company is hosting here?
The group went dead silent for 3 seconds. Then, a tide of sarcastic comments and memes came flooding in. Xiao Zhang was the first to pipe up.
Wow, is this our company's annual gala? I thought a farmer's market was opening.
Marketing manager Wang Li, who was also President Wang's niece, immediately followed up.
This aesthetic is truly something else. Li Ming, are you planning to take the whole company on a trip down memory lane to the hard times of the 80s? At Li Ming.
Ha ha ha, that big red arch is visually striking. Even my mom's village temple fair isn't this lively. Li Ming has really let himself go this time.
Message after message, mocking meme after mocking meme. They were like sharp knives stabbing into my heart. I had become the laughingstock of the entire company, a certified idiot. The phone vibrated incessantly in my hand, and I felt as if I were about to drown in these malicious comments. The pressure came crashing down like a landslide. I was on the verge of a breakdown.
Stop looking at it.
I hadn't noticed when my second uncle had walked up to me. He took my phone away. He looked calmly at the chat history in the group, his face devoid of expression. Then, he pulled me to the center of the venue and pointed at the big red arch and colorful flags that everyone was mocking.
Xiao Ming, look, this is called festive. This is called flourishing.
Second uncle's voice was steady.
The company is holding a gala. Are we looking for good omens? What we want is this liveliness, this spirited energy.
He turned his head to look at the fellow villagers who were busy working.
Others laugh because they don't understand. They don't understand that the simplest things are the most powerful.
Having said his piece, second uncle paid no more mind to the noise in the group chat. He personally got to work, leading a few dexterous Annies from the mutual aid group to scavenge a pile of colorful cloth strips and discarded plastic bottles and cans. I watched helplessly as they took these items that looked like trash and, on that crude stage, fashioned a decoration that was kaleidoscopic and filled with a quaint, rustic artistic flair. They even cut countless large double happiness and fortune characters out of red paper and pasted them all over the factory walls. Second Uncle even went out his way to find a large wooden board and wrote 8 vigorous, powerful characters on it in red paint.
Journeying together to mountains and seas, filling our home with love.
Looking at those 8 characters, my heart suddenly stirred. Was it tacky? Indeed, it was tacky. But for some reason, seeing the dedication and intensity of Second Uncle and the villagers, the stifling grievance and anger in my heart actually began to subside. I started to think seriously about how to turn tacky into trendy. I picked up my phone, channeling Second Uncle's mindset, and sent my response into the company group, which was already in an uproar. I offered no defense, nor did I show anger. I simply replied calmly to President Wang's photo. Thank you, President Wang and colleagues, for your interest in the gala's progress. This is exactly the new countryside, new vibe retro theme we have specially planned for this year. It aims to let everyone step back from busy urban life to return to authenticity and experience a unique taste of real, rustic life. More surprises to come, so stay tuned. After my message went out, the group fell into a brief, dead silence again. A few seconds later, Wang Li jumped out again.
Hee hee, new countryside, new vibe. Li Ming, you can really spin a yarn. I think it's more like new grave mound, new vibe.
But this time, there were significantly fewer people echoing her. Although my statement sounded like a desperate attempt to save face, it also gave this tacky gala a theme that sounded somewhat plausible. Some colleagues who had originally just been watching the drama began to feel a twinge of curiosity. I looked at my phone screen and exhaled a long sigh of relief. This was the first counterattack I had launched against this crisis of public opinion. It was faint, but ultimately I had not fallen. The wave of public opinion subsided temporarily, but the preparation for the gala faced a new challenge: performances. A gala without performances is like a dish without salt, bland and flavorless. I sent out a call for performances in the internal company group. The responders were few and far between. Most people were in a wait-and-see mode, or they simply used busy with work to brush me off. A few young employees who usually enjoyed singing and dancing and loved being in the limelight went out of their way to check out the venue. Upon seeing the crude, open-air stage and the second-hand sound system Second Uncle had scavenged, they curled their lips in disdain.
You've got to be kidding, Li Ming. Perform on this? There isn't even a spotlight, and the speakers are crackling with static. It's so tacky. Exactly. Performing in a place like this. I'd be too embarrassed to even post it on my moments.
With that, they strutted away, abandoning any thought of going on stage. Wang Li, Boss Wang's niece, who loved nothing more than stirring up trouble, loudly announced in the break room.
Have you heard? No one is willing to perform at that annual party Li Ming is organizing. He's as anxious as a cat on a hot tin roof. I'd like to see how he gets out of this one. Turning the company party into a village variety show, who would want to go up there and humiliate themselves?
Every word of this reached my ears, and I was burning with anxiety. Boss Wang was waiting for my demise, and my colleagues were waiting to see me make a fool of myself. If I couldn't even scrape together a decent lineup of performances, this annual party would be a complete and utter failure. Second Uncle noticed my anxiety. He didn't go around begging and pleading like I did. Instead, without making a fuss, he called out the troupe of folk artists he had brought along. An old man who played the swana, a master on the eru, and an Annie who sang local opera. That afternoon, right there in the empty factory building, they took their stances and began to play, lost in their own world. The high-pitched, resonant sound of the swana pierced the silence of the construction site, followed by the melodious lilting of the eru, paired with the opera vocals rich in local dialect. it somehow created a wonderful harmony. The music lacked the polish and glamour of the pop songs found in the city, but it carried a vigorous vitality that came straight from the earth. The sound carried far. Gradually, some colleagues who were working overtime were drawn in by this unique music and wandered over in twos and threes. They stood at a distance, watching curiously. Their expressions shifted from initial bewilderment to relaxation and amusement. When the piece ended, second uncle struck while the iron was hot. He stepped forward and cheerfully introduced these artists to everyone. He also vividly described scenes of how celebrations were held back in his home village.
When the time comes, all the folks in the village, young and old, whether they can sing or dance or not, have to go up there, belt out a tune, and shake a leg. It's not about looking good. It's about having fun and being together.
Second uncle's words carried a simple, down-to-earth infectiousness. Among the onlookers, a few young men and women were caught up in the joyous atmosphere. A young guy from the design department, who was usually very shy, actually stepped forward and asked bashfully,
"Sir, that swona of yours. Could you teach me how to play a note or two?"
One thing led to another, and the atmosphere instantly livened up. The young people who had previously turned their noses up at the shabby stage had drifted over at some point as well. Seeing everyone in such high spirits, they started to feel tempted too. One of the girls approached me on her own initiative.
Li Ming, the few of us could put together a dance number, but can we play our own music?
Of course you can. I was overjoyed. Second uncle also mobilized the ladies from the mutual aid group, who were good at singing and dancing, asking them to prepare their best square dance routine.
When the time comes, we'll teach it right there on the spot. I guarantee we'll set the mood on fire.
Second uncle said, patting his chest. Just like that, the problem of the performances was miraculously solved. But a new worry surged up. The stage effects, the lighting, the sound system. These fundamental flaws still weighed on my heart like a giant boulder. I tossed and turned over this, unable to sleep all night. I didn't know that a bigger storm was quietly waiting for me on the eve of the annual party. The eve of the annual party. The entire brickyard was brightly lit and bustling with activity. Second uncle was leading the folks from the mutual aid group in the final setup and inspections. Big red lanterns were hung one by one, and colored ribbons fluttered in the evening breeze. Dozens of round tables covered in red cloth were arranged neatly in the center of the factory floor, creating a festive sea of red. Over in the kitchen area, large woks were set up, the firewood was burning roaringly, and the aroma of stewed meat permeated the air, making mouths water. A few colleagues who had volunteered to help and I were exhausted, but looking at the lively scene before us, our hearts were filled with anticipation and a strange sense of accomplishment.
All right, everyone take a break. We got a lot to do tomorrow.
Second uncle clapped his hands, signaling that everyone could call it a night. Just as we were preparing to leave, an accident happened. With a loud snap, the entire factory, along with the courtyard outside, instantly plunged into a deathly silent darkness. The power was out.
What happened? Did a fuse blow?
A commotion broke out in the darkness. My heart skipped a beat, and I immediately rushed to the circuit breaker box. The breakers were fine. I immediately called the property management responsible for the area, but their reply sent a chill through me. Power outage? Not at all. Everything is normal on our end, and there are no scheduled repairs. It wasn't a grid failure. Second uncle turned on a flashlight, and together we checked the temporary wiring we had strung up. Soon, he stopped at a main power connection point in the corner of the courtyard. He shone the light on the connection, his expression grim. I leaned in to look, and a chill shot up from the soles of my feet to the top of my head. The main power cable had been cut clean through with pliers. The cut was fresh and neat. This was sabotage. My head buzzed. The first thought that flashed through my mind was Mr. Wong and his niece, Wong Li. It was them. It had to be them. They saw the annual meeting coming together, saw that my plans hadn't collapsed as they expected, so they resorted to this most despicable, underhanded tactic. Despair, utter, absolute despair, washed over me instantly like freezing seawater. The annual meeting was tomorrow. Without electricity, the stage lights, sound equipment, kitchen appliances, everything was just scrap metal. All my previous efforts, all my struggles and resistance, had in this moment become a complete and utter joke. My career was over. I was finished. My legs gave way, and I nearly collapsed to the ground.
What are you panicking for?
A rough, powerful hand steadied me. It was second uncle. In the darkness, I couldn't see his expression, but his voice was unusually calm, instantly grounding me.
The sky hasn't fallen yet.
He told me to pull myself together, then took out his old-fashioned keypad phone and quickly made a call.
Hello? Xiao Jun? It's your Uncle Jangwo. Yes, I'm in the city. Your cousin has a bit of an emergency here. Can you bring your gear and come over right now? I'll send you the address. The sooner, the better.
Hanging up, second uncle patted my shoulder.
Don't worry. Your cousin is an electrician. He'll have a way.
In less than an hour, a motorcycle roared into the courtyard, its engine sputtering. A young man about my age jumped off the bike. Strapped to the back seat was a massive, clumsy-looking machine.
Uncle, Ming, I'm here.
Cousin Xiao Jun, the distant cousin and electrician second uncle had mentioned, had rushed over in the middle of the night to save the day. The machine he brought was a small diesel generator.
Uncle, this is my prized possession. I only bring it out for big events in the village.
Xiao Jun said as he deftly connected the wires. The generator roared to life, and several emergency lights flickered back on. Although the light was dim, it dispelled the suffocating darkness. I knew this generator couldn't power the entire annual meeting, but at least it could ensure the minimum operation of the stage sound system and a few main lights. It was a lifeline carved out of desperation. Second uncle looked at the roaring generator and whispered to me.
That thing is the last of my resources. I'm going all in for you this time.
Looking at second uncle's bloodshot eyes and his cheeks reddened by the cold wind, my eyes instantly welled up. An indescribable mixture of guilt and gratitude surged within me. At the same time, my hatred for Mr. Wong reached its peak. He didn't just want to ruin my job. He wanted to destroy the hard work and goodwill of my family. Second uncle didn't give me much time to be sentimental. He sprang into action immediately.
If we don't have enough electricity, we'll make up for it with light.
Leading the Annies of the mutual aid group, he dug up hundreds upon hundreds of red candles from who knows where. They placed the candles in glass tumblers and set them on every dining table, along the edge of the stage, and all across the factory windowsills. They also found countless sheets of colored cellophane and transparent plastic bottles, filled them with small colored lights, and hung them everywhere. Without the harsh electric lighting, the entire factory, bathed in the glow of candles and colored lights, took on an unexpectedly warm, retro, and dreamlike atmosphere. Watching second uncle's busy silhouette amidst the candlelight, I wiped the moisture from the corners of my eyes. I walked over, picked up a candle, and joined him in the setup. I had only one thought in my mind. Wang Di Fu, just you wait. Tomorrow, I'll show you exactly what it means to fall into your own trap. On the day of the annual meeting, as the sky was just turning a misty gray, I stood at the main gate of the brick factory, sporting two massive dark circles under my eyes. The cold wind blew against my face, but a fire burned in my heart. Apprehension, nervousness, and a trace of wild anticipation. The employees arrived one after another. When they saw the big red arch still standing tall and the rustic meets chic, candlelit arrangement inside the factory, the expressions on their faces were quite a sight. There was surprise, curiosity, unconcealed snickers, and in some eyes, a flash of warmth sparked by childhood memories.
Oh my God, is it really this style? Look at that table, it's actually set with melon seeds, peanuts, and candy blocks. It's exactly like the wedding banquets I went to as a kid. You know what, this candlelight dinner vibe is actually kind of romantic.
Amidst the whispering, everyone found their seats, curiously sizing up this magical realist annual party venue transformed from an abandoned factory. Director Wong and several senior executives arrived fashionably late, timing their entrance perfectly. As soon as they entered, they were stunned by the scene before them. The carefully prepared look of arrogance on Director Wong's face showed a crack. He had probably expected to see a chaotic mess caused by the power outage. Not this scene which, though crude, was orderly and even possessed a certain peculiar beauty. He scanned the room, a cold smile hanging on the corner of his mouth, and walked up to me. He lowered his voice and said at a volume only the two of us could hear.
Li Ming, you're really something. Even without electricity, you could come up with a stunt like this. Turning the company annual party into a poverty relief gala for a destitute county, you're very creative.
I could smell the suppressed rage in his words. Resisting the urge to punch him, I squeezed out a standard professional smile. Director Wong, you flatter me. This is our carefully crafted, return to authenticity, immersive annual party. I believe it will bring an unforgettable experience to you and all our colleagues. Director Wong was choked up by my words, gave a cold harumph, flicked his sleeve, and walked away to sit at the head table. The annual party officially began. No dazzling light shows, no flashy opening videos. Second uncle, wearing his clean old jacket, walked onto the simple stage surrounded by candlelight. He picked up the microphone.
Ahem, distinguished leaders, brothers and sisters, fellas and gals.
An opening line in a down-to-earth dialect instantly ignited laughter across the room. Even the executives at the head table, who had been keeping straight faces, couldn't help but laugh.
I'm Li Ming's second uncle, and also the manager of this venue today. We don't have all that fancy, empty talk here. Today there's just one goal. Let everyone eat well, drink well, and have fun. I now declare the XX Company 20XX Grand Family Gathering officially open. Let the feast begin.
No long-winded speeches from leaders, just straight to the feast. This crisp and efficient style won a full house of cheers. The folks from the mutual aid group, wearing matching red aprons, started serving dishes like a gust of wind. The first dish was the big wok stew cooked by second uncle himself. It was served in a huge enamel basin, filled with soft-stewed pork belly, potatoes, vermicelli, and Napa cabbage, steaming hot and overflowing with aroma. The people at the tables looked at each other, not quite knowing how to start. A bold young guy from the sales department was the first to pick up a mouthful with his chopsticks. His eyes suddenly lit up.
Damn! It's delicious.
This shout was like a starting gun. Everyone started eating, and then the entire factory was filled with nothing but rising and falling exclamations of praise.
This taste is incredible. Much better than hotel food. It smells so good. This is the real taste of home.
Sitting at the head table, seeing the executives around him eating with such gusto, Director Wong's face grew uglier by the minute. The service from the villagers was warm and attentive. Brother, want another bowl of soup? Sister, enough steamed buns? We've got fresh ones out of the pot in the back. Their heartfelt simplicity and sincerity made all the employees, so used to professional fake smiles, feel a long-lost, unguarded warmth. As the atmosphere improved, the initial awkwardness and disdain were gradually replaced by curiosity and relaxation. Some people started taking out their phones to snap photos of the flickering candlelight and the hearty dishes. I saw that the disdain and mockery on Wong Li's face were slowly disappearing too. I knew that second uncle's first move, grab their stomachs, was a success. After a few rounds of drinks and plenty of food, the party moved on to the performance segment. The first to go on stage were those few young employees who had previously complained about the stage being shabby. To the beat of powerful music, they performed a dynamic street dance. Although the stage was simple and the sound system was just audible quality, they danced with extraordinary effort. Colleagues offstage waved their arms and cheered loudly for them. Next up were the folk artists invited by second uncle. As the old man with the swana stepped onto the stage, the entire hall fell silent. He took a deep breath and puffed out his cheeks. A high-pitched, resonant, and piercing swana melody rang through the entire factory building. It was not a dirge, but an incredibly joyous rendition of Song of the Phoenix, bursting with vitality. Everyone was awestruck. These urban white-collar workers, accustomed to pop music, were experiencing this soul-shaking folk art form live for the first time. CEO Wong sat at the head table. He had been whispering with his senior executive next to him, but as the Swana melody soared to the clouds, he involuntarily stopped talking. Holding his wine glass, he stared blankly at the old man playing with total abandon on the stage, wearing an extremely complex expression. There was shock, confusion, and even a trace of bewilderment. As the song ended, thunderous applause erupted. Immediately after, the mutual aid group, aunties, dressed in bright outfits, walked onto the stage laughing and chatting. The music of the most dazzling folk style began to play, and they led the whole audience in a square dance. Those simple, cheerful, and even slightly comical moves completely ignited the atmosphere. The sales director, usually serious and suited up, was now clumsily twisting his body to the auntie's rhythm, his face beaming with a childlike smile. The admin manager dragged a female colleague from finance along, dancing more happily than anyone else. The entire annual party venue turned into a sea of joy. People toasted each other, no longer constrained by departments or ranks. The geeks from the tech department and the hot girls from marketing had their arms around each other, singing out-of-tune songs. Here, there were no superiors or subordinates, no KPIs, no office rat race. Only the simplest, most direct happiness. It was as if everyone had returned to that era of material scarcity, but spiritual abundance. Wang Li had originally been sitting there with a look of disdain, but seeing her colleagues having so much fun, she couldn't help but take out her phone to snap a few photos, a smile she didn't even notice appearing on her face. I heard a colleague beside me exclaim,
Honestly, this party is tacky, but it's so much fun. It's 100 times better than those fancy ones where we just ate, drew a lottery, and left.
Yeah, I've never been this relaxed. It feels like going home for the new year.
Watching this lively and harmonious scene before me, the giant stone hanging in my heart finally landed. I didn't notice when second uncle walked up to me. He quietly handed me a cup of rice wine he had brought himself in a plastic bottle. He pointed at the people laughing heartily in the center and whispered,
Xiao Ming, see that? That's called the human touch.
I raised the cup of cloudy rice wine and drank it in one gulp. Spicy yet sweet. I understood. Second uncle's rustic wisdom didn't just break through budget limitations. It pierced through the cold, hard walls of urban interpersonal relationships. He used the most unadorned method to build a bridge of sincere communication. The atmosphere of the annual party reached its peak after several rounds of games and lucky draws. Second uncle had arranged a special surprise segment. He invited our village's old party secretary onto the stage. The party secretary was a man in his 70s, hale and hearty, wearing a faded mouse suit. He didn't hold a script. He just stood on stage and, in unpretentious language heavy with a rural accent, began telling stories about our village. He spoke of how the village grew from poverty step by step. He spoke of the origin of the village mutual aid group, how whenever a family had a wedding or a funeral, the whole village would help without asking for payment. Those with money contributed money, and those with strength contributed effort. Finally, the party secretary's gaze landed on me.
This kid, Li Ming, is the golden phoenix that flew out of our village. He's made something of himself, but his roots are still here. I heard from Jiangwo that he ran into trouble in the city this time. One phone call from Jiangwo, and us old folks came without a second thought. Why? Because he's not just Jiangwo's nephew, he's a child of our whole village. We aren't just helping him as an individual, we are helping our own hope.
The party secretary's words had no flowery rhetoric, yet they struck the hearts of everyone present like a heavy hammer. Many young employees struggling alone in the city felt a deep resonance, their eyes turning red. I could no longer hold back my tears. I walked onto the stage and took the microphone from the party secretary, my throat so choked with emotion I couldn't speak. I looked at second uncle off stage, at those simple and kind-hearted villagers, and at my colleagues who had gone from mockery and doubt to now applauding for me. I bowed deeply. Thank you, second uncle. Thank you, fellow villagers. And thank you to all my colleagues who supported me. I just want to say this. No matter where we are, We must never forget our roots, nor the people who have treated us with genuine kindness. This debt of gratitude is something I, Li Ming, will carry with me for the rest of my life. My speech was brief, but deeply heartfelt. The applause from the audience was thunderous and unceasing. Many female colleagues were already secretly wiping away tears. At the head table, stiff was no longer enough to describe Mr. Wang's expression. He sat there like a weathered stone statue, all color drained from his face. He realized that the scheme he had so carefully orchestrated to humiliate me had, by a twist of fate, transformed into a magnificent stage for my own coronation, a perfect opportunity to win everyone's hearts. He looked around and saw that the other executives were also deeply moved, their expressions clearly showing their emotion. He knew then that he had completely lost control of the situation. What devastated him even more was that the VIP clients he had invited had actually stood up to lead the applause. One of them gave me a thumbs up from across the room and shouted,
"Young man, well done. This annual party has creativity, warmth, and soul."
Mr. Wang's face turned ghastly pale in an instant. He felt as though he had been stripped naked and cast into the center of a public square, scrutinized by countless eyes with nowhere to hide. The shock, rage, and sense of failure raging within him could no longer be masked by a dismissive sneer. Just then, second uncle walked over to Mr. Wang holding 2 cups of rice wine. He handed one to him. Mr. Wang took it instinctively, his hand trembling slightly. With a smile that was both honest and all-knowing, second uncle said softly,
"Mr. Wang, what do you think? Not bad for a country celebration, right? Did it manage to give everyone a taste of home?"
Mr. Wang gripped the wine cup, his lips quivering, unable to utter a single word. He looked up at me. Behind those gold-rimmed spectacles, the eyes that once held such contempt and mockery were changed. They were now filled with deep shock and a trace of almost imperceptible regret. After the party ended, the employees lingered, unwilling to leave. They crowded around me and second uncle, offering their congratulations.
Li Ming, you're amazing. This is absolutely the best annual party I've ever attended. Exactly. Can we do it like this again next year? I'll be the first to sign up to perform.
Xiao Zhang, who had previously ridiculed me, squeezed through the crowd. Face flushed, he handed me a glass of wine.
Brother Ming, I didn't know any better before. I'll down 3 glasses as a penalty to myself.
I smiled, patted him on the shoulder, and drained my glass in one go. Secretary Xiao Li sneaked over and whispered excitedly,
Li Ming, you should have seen Mr. Wang's face. He looked miserable from the moment the party hit its high point. When he left, he looked like he'd lost his soul.
A wave of satisfaction washed over me. When I returned to the office the next day, the atmosphere had completely changed. The internal company group chats were dominated by discussions and photos from the previous night's party. It was practically all anyone was posting. Someone had posted photos and videos of the event to their WeChat moments, and unexpectedly, they went viral. Several local news bloggers reposted them with all sorts of headlines. The most down-to-earth annual party in history. Another company goes viral. As I walked through the office, every colleague I met nodded and smiled at me, their eyes filled with respect and goodwill. At 10 o'clock in the morning, my internal line rang.
Li Ming, come to my office.
Mr. Wang's voice sounded tired and hoarse. I walked into that office, which had once felt so suffocating, but my heart was surprisingly calm. I had prepared for the worst. At most, I'd pack up and leave. But this time, I walked in with my head held high. Mr. Wang sat in his executive chair, looking as if he had aged 10 years overnight. He didn't look at me. He just stared at an ornament on his desk, remaining silent for a long time.
Li Ming.
He finally began, his tone stripped of its usual arrogance, replaced by a stiff awkwardness.
The annual party was very well done. It exceeded my expectations.
I was somewhat surprised. I had expected him to fly into a rage and burn bridges.
Therefore, the company has decided.
He paused, as if making a difficult decision.
To give you a promotion and a raise. Additionally, we are establishing a new corporate culture and events department, and you will serve as the department head.
A promotion? A raise? I could hardly believe my ears.
And one more thing.
Mr. Wong continued.
Your second uncle and his team worked hard for this party. The company will issue a bonus as a token of gratitude. Furthermore, I've seen the feedback on social media. That countryside tourism concept your uncle has, it's very interesting. The company is considering establishing a long-term partnership with them to develop that project.
Mixed emotions surged through me. There was the joy of victory, the satisfaction of being recognized, and a lingering sigh over the complexity of human nature. I knew Mr. Wong hadn't suddenly grown a conscience. He was weighing the pros and cons. The unexpected success of the annual party and the positive public response had revealed new business opportunities to him. As for me, I had transformed from a pawn he could manipulate at will into someone with exploitable value. I didn't immediately accept with wild ecstasy. I looked at Mr. Wong and calmly stated my terms. Mr. Wong, I appreciate the company's recognition. I can accept the promotion, but I hope that in the future, the company can extend a little more trust and opportunity to its grassroots employees. Additionally, if we are establishing a cultural activities department, I request that my second uncle be retained as the department's honorary advisor. A flicker of surprise flashed through Mr. Wong's eyes. He likely hadn't expected that I would dare to negotiate with him. He stared at me for a few seconds before finally nodding.
Agreed.
The moment I walked out of that office, I knew Li Ming, was no longer that insignificant employee who could be bullied by anyone. My right to speak was something I had earned back myself, word by word. The news of my promotion, pay raise, and appointment as the head of the newly established Cultural Activities Department hit the company like a bomb, causing a massive sensation. Everyone looked at me in a whole new light. Wong Li looked as if she had swallowed a fly. She complained in the break room about Mr. Wong favoring outsiders, but she no longer dared to say a single nasty word to my face. When she saw me, she even had to politely address me as Manager Li. Second uncle became our company's honorary advisor and folk culture ambassador. His theories of winning through simplicity and the human touch actually began to circulate within the company and were even written into the new corporate culture training manual. Under my leadership, the Cultural Activities Department planned a series of events blending urban trends with rural elements, such as weekend farm picking team building and in-office intangible cultural heritage handicraft workshops. Each event was widely praised and greatly enhanced the company's cohesion. Mr. Wong also truly honored his promise. The company invested in a collaboration with Second Uncle's Villagers Mutual Aid Group to develop a short-haul tour route themed around rural experience. This project not only brought considerable economic benefits to the company, but also provided tangible income and employment opportunities for Second Uncle's hometown. Watching these positive changes inside and outside the company, my heart was filled with emotion. From an invisible office worker who was nearly swept out the door to a department head who could now stand on his own 2 feet and even contribute to his hometown, I had finally found my place and value in this cold city. On the day Second Uncle was to return to our hometown, I went to see him off. The train station was bustling with people coming and going. Second Uncle was still wearing that old jacket he had arrived in, but the smile on his face was incredibly brilliant. He patted my shoulder and said with gratification,
Xiao Ming, you've made something of yourself. Remember my words. Things in the city work on the exact same principles as things in the countryside. No matter what happens, never forget the heart.
He pointed to his chest. I nodded vigorously, my eyes feeling hot. I watched Second Uncle's receding figure disappear into the surging crowd. I knew in my heart that this comeback at the annual party was not just a personal victory. It was a successful counterstrike by rustic, simple wisdom against this restless, elitist urban society. My story became a legend within the company. A legend proving that you can't judge a book by its cover, nor measure the sea with a bucket. It inspired ordinary people like me who had once been slighted, exploited, and looked down upon. I was no longer the submissive, long-suffering Li Ming. I had found my roots, and I had found my direction. My career was just beginning a new chapter,